distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the President and Fellows of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Ghana's premier learned institution, I warmly welcome you to this evening's special event to celebrate the centenarian, Dr. Evans-Anfom, who is a fellow and past president of the Academy. The chairman for this evening's event is the president of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences in the person of Professor Henrietta Mensa Bonsu. Shall we please clap for her as she comes to me?
Good evening, past presidents of the Academy, vice presidents of the Academy, distinguished fellows of the Academy, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening once again. It is a great pleasure to see you here, the very first lecture of 2020. This is a special lecture by our distinguished fellow, Professor Felix Konotey-Ahulu, in honor of another distinguished fellow, our past president, Dr. Emmanuel Evans-Anfom, who clocked 100 years in October. Professor Evans-Anfom was the president when the Academy clocked 30 years. So he has survived being a president 30 years and counting. It gives me great assurance that I will survive this also. We have provided a little profile on the honoree for tonight. And so I move on to introduce the speaker. Professor Felix Konotey-Ahulu has a bio that has enough voltage to light a room. It would take too long to tell you everything. And so he has kindly provided a website where you can find out more about him if you are so inclined. Professor Konotey-Ahulu is, as I said, a distinguished fellow of this academy, the Kweji Agri Distinguished Professor of Human Genetics at the Faculty of Science, University of Cape Coast. He was consultant physician and genetic counselor in hemoglobinopathy at Kolebu Teaching Hospital and in London's Harley Street. I'm certain that most of you know he's one of the most acclaimed scholars on the sickle cell disease. And he has won many awards, including the gold medal of this academy as far back as in 1974 when I was in secondary school. Only in late 2018, he received a Doctor of Science from the University of Hertfordshire to crown his many, many, many achievements. I will keep talking as the young people sit so that they don't distract your attention. But if you look at the list of awards on that page, it will tell you that Dr. Evans-Anfom couldn't have had a better scholar to stand on his reputation and deliver a lecture in his honor to commemorate his 100th anniversary. And so, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished speaker, Professor Felix I.D. Konotey-Ahulu, Fellow of the Academy.
Professor Henrietta Mensa Bonsu, President of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, past presidents of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, vice presidents of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Nime, Nanano, distinguished guests, fellows of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. It gives me great pleasure to give this lecture dedicated to a special person. It's been called a special lecture, and it is dedicated to a special person. It is only fitting that we should start with him. When I landed at Konotey International Airport, I said I will not go anywhere until I have seen him. And so his elegant daughter, Rachel Badu, took me to go and see her father. So happy to see him.
Madam President of the Academy, Madam President of the Academy, and colleague fellows of our beloved Academy, I'm happy on this occasion to be able to reach you by direct video recording. I regret that I'm unable to be present because of the restraints which prevent me from attending academic lectures. Man, I'm a renowned scientist, Professor Konotey-Ahulu, for doing me the honor of dedicating this to me. The Academy is now 6 decades in existence. And I'm happy to say that it has risen from the time when, to mention Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, I thought you were a second cycle, second school, like the Accra Academy. But now, when you mention Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, it's recognized as a learned body which has improved, intellectual capacity of many, and helped to raise the education level which we are all striving for. In the beginning, we went through an atmosphere of an unfriendly atmosphere, if I may say so, until the era of President Kufuor, who injected some friendliness between the academy and government. And since then, you know, successive governments, you know, have helped the academy to rise from that level and to be stationed, you know, thanks to President Mahama, to the exquisite buildings that we are in now. I'm glad to note that it is from the academy that the culture of silence was broken by that distinguished historian and professor Aidoo with his lecture, J.B. Dankwa Lectures, some years ago, which has since then made it possible for the media and the press here to stand up and say what they want to say. Why, my friend and colleague, Professor Konotey-Ahulu, chose to honor me, I don't know. Apart from the fact that by the grace of God, I've reached the age of 100 and become a centenarian. Something which was achieved not by my efforts, but just doing what I should be doing. So I thank Madam President for the invitation to send a word of greetings to the meeting. I wish I was there. And the title of the lecture is quite intriguing. And I'm dying to hear its contents. I'm sure all of you are also dying to hear the contents of the lecture. So I would like to stop here whilst, you know, the lecture goes on. Thank you.
How many centenarians you have ever heard speak so clearly at his age? Amazing. Professor Henrietta, Mensa Bonsu, and all of you, I thank you for allowing me to give a lecture whose content I'm sure Dr. Evans-Anfom would approve of. That was him at the age of 80, and the lecture has been dedicated to him. It started from Buckingham Palace. I got a letter from Buckingham Palace to deliver to him, which I did as soon as I arrived. The letter came from Brigadier Archie Miller Bakewell, the personal secretary of the Duke of Edinburgh, saying that the Duke would be pleased if I could deliver the lecture to him. And the letter signed himself as patron. I wonder how many of us knew that the Duke of Edinburgh is, not was, is the patron of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, and he was the first president of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, followed by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. That was him, 1959 to 1959 to 1961, patron. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the brainchild of Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. Mr. Justice Niama Olenu, 1969 to 1972. Professor E.A. Boateng, 73 to 76. It was when he was the president that he gave a gold medal to Professor Francis Alote and me in 1974. Professor C.O. Eastman, who in those days could do any operation from the head to the toe. Professor F.G. Torto, 1981 to 1982, whom I remembered that on the 6th of June, 1953, when we were doing the inter-BSc exams, a chemistry practical, he would go around looking at those who were extremely busy doing the practical, and he would come around, look at my face, look at the paper, and look at my face again, and go around. For 3 hours, all I had on the paper were the dates and my name. Of course, I failed, and I left Legon. Most Reverend Professor K.A. Dixon, 1983 to 1986. Then the 8th President, Dr. Emmanuel Evans-Anfom. Professor C.G. Baeta, 1991 to 1992. Professor D.A. Bekoe, 1993 to 1996. I'll just say a word about him because it would fit in with some of the things that I'm going to say afterwards. His lecturer at the University of the Gold Coast was a man called Ralph Hume, Mr. Ralph Hume, who came into my room one Saturday and asked me to work as hard as Ajay Bekoe, who was 2 years ahead of me at Legon. Then, as he was going out of the room, he said, "This Bekoe man is always ahead of me, of the lectures. Before I go to the lectures to teach him, he has already been there ahead of me." That was him. Clap for him, please. Professor J.A. Kwabena Nketia, a legend in himself. His daughter is here. His son-in-law helped in arranging the sound and things here. Professor Fred T. Sai, who got first class honors at University College in his exams. Of course, you know all about him. Nana Dr. S.K.B. Asante was the next president. Dr. Letitia E. Obeng, aquatic biology, was the next. Professor R.F. Amodu, who in school, even in school, was able to play the piano so marvelously, Chopin would have been pleased to be his tutor. Professor F.K.A. amazing man, amazing man. I don't know how many of us, those who are a quarter the age of Dr. Evans-Anfom, have read his biography. Here was a man who didn't go to any of the prestigious secondary schools. He taught himself, went to London, and whilst he was not yet in the examination room for his BSc, had the audacity to go to Imperial College and ask to see the professor of mathematics. He turned up, and Alote told the professor, I want a place for MSc in mathematics. And the professor said, so what did you get in the BSc? He said, I've yet to take the exam. He stood his ground, and the professor looked at this small African man and went and called two other professors. I've got an African boy here who says he wants to do MSc. He's not yet got his BSc. So they came, the humility of some of these Englishmen. 3 Englishmen came in, gave him a piece of chalk. In those days, you had a blackboard. They picked a book from the shelves, opened a problem, and they gave it to him. Within a few minutes, he solved the problem. They looked at each other, and they gave him another one. He solved it. So they gave him a place before his BSc, they gave him an MSc place. That was him. Professor Akilapa Sawyer, you will see his picture again afterwards when he was the Vice Chancellor, and we went to Oxford University to award Dr. Cecilia Williams, a DSc of the University of Ghana, for the work she had done for this country. Professor Abba Bentil Andam, who is here and who is a brain in physics. Then our Professor Henrietta J. and Mensa Bonsu, a lawyer of no mean standing. They presided over an academy which has got a great reputation in the world. I'm outside Ghana, so I know how they feel about the Ghana Academy of Sciences. Dr. Kofi Annan, of course, had the Nobel Prize, but those I knew in person and whom I had a hard regard for are shown here. Mr. Justice Olenu was the chairman of the first council of the Ghana doctors. Professors Alex Kwapon, Baeta Ofosu Apia, Chum Barima, Kwesi Dixon, Austin Amisa, Silas Dudu, I knew all of them, Emmanuel Aidoo. When I came from England as a medical officer, and I worked under Dr. Dudu and Dr. Hall. After 6 months, I was posted. And I'm saying this for the young doctors to note. I was posted to do my surgery under Dr. Aidoo and Dr. Eastman. They would start operating at 6 a.m., and they will continue operating till about 8 p.m. At lunchtime, I had to beg them to allow me to go and have lunch whilst they ate plantain and groundnuts and soft drinks. I'm saying this for our young doctors. They worked hard. The largest spleen ever removed that I know of was removed by Dr. Aidoo. There was a man whose abdomen was so huge, and I assisted him in operating, and he removed the spleen. It was amazing. I go back. Professor Amona Boateng, I mentioned already. Hey, Ata Ephraim Amu. Efo Amu. Owura Amu. He was a legend in himself. A phrase in his anthem of the land of the Ghana national anthem, a phrase of the music, even Beethoven would be pleased to hear it. It goes like this. La so fa mi re 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 mi so mi la mi re so la so la si do re mi. That one is English, but the Ghana one is mi so so mi la so so do mi re so mi so so mi la so la to la la la. That phrase la to la la la, Beethoven would have been pleased to hear that. And then Ebenezer Laid, he was a genius in himself. Yes, I mentioned Alote already, Charles Sismon, F.G. Toto, Kwabena Nketia. He was a legend in his own way. Fantastic. Now, I am emphasizing all this because of what I'm going to say afterwards about history surpasses science. I'm mentioning these geniuses, though that you could remember them. Aidoo, historian, has been mentioned already. He was admitted under me at the Cromwell Hospital, and when they heard that the head of state, His Excellency John Achekum Okufuor, was going to come and visit, the whole staff, he came, the whole staff stood at attention around his bed. They didn't know he was so important. The head of state came in and looked at us, and he announced, he pointed his finger at Aidoo, and he said, "This man made me president." And we all clapped. From then on, all the nurses who came into the room bowed to him until he was discharged. I must hurry. Genius displayed by Ghanaians and who are FGA and non-FGAs. It's amazing. They all listed in the book of Professor Stephen Adai, Evolution of Modern Medicine in a Developing Country. Please, all the medical schools here, please make it a must read, because we ought to know what had been achieved by Ghanaians and non-Ghanaians as well. Well, here is a list of those who have made a mark outside Ghana. Reginald Adai, a brilliant physician, Aidoo, Cambridge University, Jonathan Ade, E.Q. Achampong, Alex Bruce Daigle, Aidoo Amah. Aidoo Amah was described by a colleague of mine called Audrey Paris, who assisted him in operations. And Aubrey told me, I have assisted many distinguished surgeons in the world. operating on children and adults. I quote, "I have never seen a better pair of hands than that of Aidoo. Please clap for him." Lade Wosonu, he topped his class in Glasgow many times and won all kinds of prizes. He's not only a surgeon, he's also a poet. Amazing. Samuel Owusu, how many of the doctors here know that he described the first African who had no G6PD enzyme at all, total G6PD enzyme, so that you have a family, one of the children becomes extremely ill on eating wache, which had beans, which will affect the person who had no enzyme at all. It was our S.K. Owusu who described this. C.A. Clufio, a gynecologist who also expert on sickle cell disease. Divina Hazel, a nurse, a sister on our ward. She is fantastic. Joseph Akwe, Henrietta, a gynecologist in England. Lord Bernard Ribeiro. I don't know if any of you saw the interview between Cameron Dodu and Jeremy Paxman, who is a very caustic interviewer on Newsnight in London. Paxman was interviewing Cameron Dodu and asked Cameron Dodu, you Ghanaians, what have you done of import? What have you achieved of import? And Cameron Dodu, in his sharp wit, asked Jeremy Paxman, have you heard of Bernard Ribeiro? He is the president of the Royal College of Surgeons of all England and the Commonwealth, voted in by British surgeons. Clap for him. And of course, that immediately curtailed the interview a bit. But I am deliberately mentioning this because of what I'm going to say afterwards. Genius displayed by Ghanaians, we have stated that already. Oh no, I'm going back. Yeah. Right. History and science defined. I define history simply as what happened, what is happening, what will happen. Not just what is recorded as happened or is happening. The record may be wrong, typing error, misinformation, of which science has many examples. If misinformation is deliberate, it is called disinformation. Now, I mention this because our historian, Stephen Addai, wrote 2 brilliant history books. One of them I told you about. The other one was The History of the Armed Forces. Brilliant detail. But there was a date in one of the pages which was dangerously wrong, because future students will read that as fact, but it was wrong. The date he gave for the execution of the heads of state, or the past head of state, was 1981. But I was in Ghana in 1979 when it happened. So please, publisher of that book, put in an erratum and correct the date. We must not take history books as the authority, we must take what happened as history. Right. Having said that, I'm going to prove that history surpasses science. How do I do that? Imagine I assemble the best brains in the world to my hometown, Odumasikrobo. And I said, I would like you to use science and science only to prove that I was born on a Saturday, the second son of my mother. And the scientist said, oh, well, we've done science, we can do that. They took the computers and the papers and pens and so on. They couldn't do it. The best they could come up about was to say that I had a 0.142857 chance of being born on a Saturday. They couldn't hit it. But an illiterate Krobo person just walks in and finds all these brilliant individuals. What are they doing here? What are they doing here? So I tell them, well, they want to find out whether I was born on a Saturday. So ask them to ask you to tell them your name. So I told them 2 or 3 of my name. No, your full name. So I said, Kwame. He said, yeah, tell them that you were born on a Saturday. You were born on a Saturday. That's history for you. The scientists couldn't get it. Right. Now, how about the second son of my mother? They scratched their heads. They didn't know how to get about it. He said, oh, ask them your name. So I said, Tete. Yeah, you are the second son of your mother. History has achieved what science could not achieve in that elementary way. Now, science, Bernard Shaw said, science never solves a problem without creating 10 more. He said this while he was toasting Albert Einstein. And then Lord Zuckerman said something which I would like to emphasize because it is at the crux of my lecture. He gave an oration which every scientist here and abroad should read. He proved that science is full of pride and prejudice. And he gave examples in the field of evolution where lies were told upon lies. The examples are all there. This is the article. It's really fantastic. It was so good. I was then editor of the Ghana Medical Journal, so I begged him to allow us to republish it. So it is in the Ghana Medical Journal. I would like the editors of the Ghana Medical Journal to urge Ghanaians to read it. Reginald Aidoo and Dr. Frank Jabano did something which I appeal to our head of state to honor. What did they do? Well, an article appeared in the British Medical Journal which said all black people going to enter an aeroplane should be tested for sickle cell. And the example they gave was that a Ghanaian nurse was flying from Kumasi to Accra and had severe abdominal pain, arrived in Accra. They operated on her, and they found that she had the sickle cell trait. They did investigation, found that she had the sickle cell trait. And they published the article and said in the article that Africans flying should be stopped at the airport and tested. It was Dr. Reginald Aidoo and Dr. Frank Jabano, who died last year, who proved that the article was not correct. And I say this for the editors of the British Medical Journal. They were honest. They forced the authors of the article, 3 of them, to show them the evidence. They couldn't, so they withdrew. They withdrew the publication. But it was too late for Kennedy Airport. They grounded African-American pilots. And the Times went to town and saying that all black air crew should be grounded. They said this even after withdrawal of the article. It took Professor Lehman, a white man in Cambridge University, to write and protest to the editor of the Times and say, look here, sickle cell traits have run Olympic Games at 7,000 feet where the air was thin and beating the whole world. What is all this nonsense about? That was Pride and Prejudice in Science. Now, Mr. President, I know Dr. Frank Jabano is dead and gone, but I beg you to honor him posthumously. Dr. Reginald Adai is with us. Please give him the highest honor because they have saved black people from humiliation. And if we don't honor them, editors will continue to do this. Those who use Facebook would have found that articles have been appearing on Facebook that black people should be careful of flying because the muscles of the body will rot from something called rhabdomyolysis, and that flying and sickle cell trait is going to kill them. I wrote to the author, to the editor of Lancet, and I said, look here, you retracted false publications in the past. Why don't you ask the editor, the author of this article, to show you the proof that the pilot whose arms were rotten from flying was indeed sickle cell trait? They refused, perhaps because I was too annoyed, and I wrote the title of the article as incompetent. And then I also said, anybody who approves of an article like that to be published without evidence of sickle cell trait should declare that they have no financial interest in the aviation industry. After all, when I was invited by the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation to give a lecture in Philadelphia, and I chose the topic sickle cell trait, the vital difference between sickle cell trait and sickle cell disease. Something happened which shook me. One professor in University of Illinois on the committee of Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation wrote to me at Kolebu and said, please, 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 remove the names, the 8 names of insurance companies in New York that have been cheating black people. Remove the names. So I did. I got to Philadelphia on Friday. Saturday morning, I was going to post a letter, and I asked, where is the pillar box? I was told, it's around the corner. So as I went out, and I went to go across the road, I heard, Doctor, where are you going? And I looked, there was a great big American black man. He said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to post a letter to my wife at Kolebu. He said, give it to me. I said, why can't I go? I am one of your 4 bodyguards. 4 bodyguards? So I went quickly into my hotel room. I knelt and I prayed to God, God, you are my bodyguard. And I called the organizers. And I said, well, why give me 4 bodyguards? He said, you're giving a lecture tonight on sickle cell trait and sickle cell disease. You took out the names of the insurance companies, but you can never be sure. They might have seen it. We don't want to take any chances. So I went and gave the lecture. I shook hands with Pauline and Alison and the great people. I lost my appetite at the dinner. I left Philadelphia at 4 a.m. But it is dangerous to speak the truth where finances are involved. I mentioned this in the British Medical Journal. I published it in the British Medical Journal, and I was happy that they put the text as the last sentence. They put it in the journal. The love of money is the root of all evil. And so we must be very careful. Look at this. This appeared in the Guardian, a black man in the Guardian. And they said, scientists believe that such and such and such a thing. Now, scientists have ceased to prove things anymore. They just believe. If I say I believe something, they say it's nonsense. But they can say scientists believe. They said a few million years ago, this, that, and that happened. And at the end of the article, of this article in The Guardian, only a month or 2 ago, it says they are doing studies on the genome, our genes, and they are going to prove from the studies that Europeans have more intelligence than anyone else. Do you find the result of what you're going to find before you do the actual test? But this is in The Guardian. But not only in The Guardian, there is abuse of history and abuse of science. Historians can deny facts, historians can distort facts, historians can publish wrong dates, as I said earlier, and the difference between misinformation and disinformation. There was a book in the early days of AIDS from Panos, P-A-N-O-S, which showed pictures of West Africa, showed Ghana full of AIDS, and Ivory Coast no AIDS at all. Now, when we knew that at that time, the AIDS were coming from Ivory Coast to Ghana. The greatest example is Darwinian evolution, the origin of species. We do not realize that the title of the book, of Darwin's book, is not only the origin of species, but the origin by means of natural selection or preservation of favored races. I put that in red. Darwin popularized the idea of races. But I can tell you, there are not many races. There is just one human race. So the term interracial or racist, it's not correct. Look at that. This appeared in the Telegraph, Daily Telegraph. And this is being taught our children in England and elsewhere, that 8 million years ago, you and I started off as relatives of the chimpanzee. And through natural selection, we arrive at the white male as the pinnacle of evolution. Now, this is accepted without question at all. It's in all the books, it's in all the papers, it's on radio, everywhere. This is it. This was only 3 months ago in the Telegraph by a lady called Sarah Napton. She specializes in this kind of thing. There you are. Our ancestor, so-called. No, this is not science as we know it. This is philosophical science, scientific philosophy. This is not history. This man, you would have known, is called James Watson. He and Crick discovered the molecular structure of the DNA. And he made a pronouncement a few years ago that the genome sequencing exercise, which is being done right now, will prove in 10 years' time that the black African has inferior intelligence. This is a Nobel Prize winner. You know what happened? He subjected himself to a test of his own genome, and they found that he was an African. They even dated his genes to the genes of my great-grandfather, 1872 or 1870. But this is the kind of prejudice that Lord Zuckerman said has infiltrated what is called science. James Watson. Now, 1 in 3 of us in this room, whether we like it or not, has an abnormal hemoglobin gene, either sickle cell gene or hemoglobin C gene. 1 in 3 of us. My father has hemoglobin C gene, and my mother has sickle cell gene. They had 11 children. 3 of us took the abnormal gene of father and the abnormal gene of mother, so they had 2 abnormal genes, which are called 2 ache genes. So they were ache, right? So 1 in 3 of us, whether we know it or not, because if you have a normal gene and an abnormal gene, as I've told you already about the Olympic athlete, it doesn't affect your health at all. And that was the lecture I gave in Philadelphia, and I was giving 4 bodyguards. You are as healthy as anyone else. Right. 1 in 3 of us. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1 in 3 of us is either AS or AC. AS or AC. This is a fact, and we are well. But they are trying to exploit that and say that 1 in 3 of us is ill. In fact, the article which appeared in the Times by the science correspondents in the Times, revealing what the scientists have said about the nurse who flew from Kumasi to Accra, said 1 in 5 Ghanaians are sick with sickle cell disease. The article didn't say sickle cell disease, it said sickle cell trait. It said 1 in 5 of us. So they're confusing things. You go to the airport, you have sickle cell trait, you're going to die. You know, it's not right at all. Now, I'm going to show you, and I'm going to ask you questions which you answer yourself. This is a Ghanaian bird. The scientists, evolutionists, say that it began as a dinosaur. And after millions of years and natural selection, this occurred. The same thing. Big Bang, molecules, natural selection, and this bird comes. And that beautiful bird, Big Bang, natural selection, and this bird comes. Accident, a Ghanaian bird. These are Ghanaian birds. Accident, they just came. Design and beauty. Accident. Rearrangement of the DNA, and you get this. Look at that. Beautiful. These birds. But you see, we have people who come to help us in this country. They are divided in two. There are white people who agree with me that this is not accident. And they come to help us in public health. But Lord Ritchie Calder said, and it's in the Lancet, there are people who are concerned about public health in reverse, and others interested in public health properly. Surely we ought to have discernment to find out which of the good white people are for us and which of them are not for us. Fortunately, I have had friends who are white who call me aside and tell me secretly, this one is not good. He's come for public health in reverse. They've told me that. So we must not accept anybody who comes as good. We must have discernment to find out those who come to help us. And there are many who come to help us. I can name them. Those who came to help us: Albert Hall, David Haddock, John Eastwood, Bella Ringingham, Marian Rianoshi, who worked on my ward. You can see that they have come to help us. But there are others who came with money and gifts. We must remember what the Romans said. Timeo Daneos, Farentes, Bona. I fear the Greeks, even when they bring gifts. We must know which of them giving us things are for us and which are not for us. Marvelous. Is this accident or design? Right. So when Professor Akilakpa Soya was the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, it was decided that one of the white people who came for good public health be honored. So he flew across the Sahara, went to Oxford, and in the company of the Ghana High Commissioner at the time, High Commissioner Mr. Annan Keto, and I was kindly invited to accompany them. We went to Oxford to honor Dame Cecilia Williams, who described Kwashoko in Ghana and the Krobo area. And she retained the name that the Ghana women told her. So this is called Kwashoko, and this is how it comes about. She was honored. A clap for her. And you can see how handsome Akilakpa Soya was then. Now, this is really serious. This is really serious. We can't go on criticizing the Europeans if we cannot show anything that we can do better than them. What we can do better than them is language. Language. This book is a big, hefty book of more than 400 pages, fine print, by Professor David Crystal in the University of Cambridge, called Encyclopedia of Language. There are hundreds of pictures of people beautifully clad of different areas and countries and different tribes. There are only 3 black men in that book. And they are shown in the book, Tafrache, stark naked. So a student in England goes and takes this book and reads it. Everybody is doing well, but the Africans stark naked. But unfortunately for David Crystal, the 3 men came from Sudan, in the area of Sudan where they built pyramids in the past. They were brilliant enough to build pyramids in the past with a special angle at the top there, different from the pyramids of Egypt. The Egyptian pyramids are 45 degrees, and the Sudanese ones are different but separate. They were brilliant, brilliant, and yet you show them naked. But Ga, the language spoken around here, Ga, language, F and A, Fu, K-A. These 2 letters of the alphabet can be used in our language to produce 74 different sentences, words, and phrases, which I've shown here in the University of Cape Coast drumstick. 74, reproducible. I'll give you a few examples. F-A is fa, or fa, or fa. Borrow, or fa, river, or afa, or afa. There are 74 different ways that a child of 3 will be able to discern the difference. And I am at the moment asking the University of Cape Coast and University of Hertfordshire that honored me with a DSC to help me produce an app which will be able to identify each of the 74 combinations of A and F acoustically without any mistake, so that anybody can go see the F-A written and they will know exactly what it means. And you know how I did it? I had introduced something called coloring sound. If the sound is high pitch, I put it red. If it's low pitch, I put it blue. And high pitch and low pitch for any of us is an octave. But there is a middle pitch, which is called mid-pitch arrest. If you say, Odiko, Odiko, the ko there is mid-pitch, and it's only 3 semitones below high pitch. It's the same pitch on the notification on your phones. If you have a high phone and it gives you notification, it gives the mid one there is called mid pitch, and it was the discovery of that mid pitch as 3 semitones from the high pitch that I gave the address in Philadelphia for. But don't worry, any Ghanaian can hit on mid-pitch very easily. How do you do that? Fortunately, both our national anthems begin with mi, 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 so, do, fa, mi, la, so, fa, mi, re, 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 mi, 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 or mi, so, so, mi, la, so, so. So that means if you are stuck, you don't want to, if you are stuck and you want to know how to say, in Krobo, a cloth, bo, the bo there, it's not bo, but bo, 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 bo. If you want to know what that sounds like, begin to sing either of our national anthems and you've got it. Yoruba, too, is the same thing. O-J-O. Ojo in Yoruba means burnt. Something is burned. Food is burning. Ojo in Yoruba means rain. Mid-pitch, Ojo means coward. Coward. And these things are not in the book of David Crystal. He makes English the pinnacle of language, but our languages are, I must hurry, I must keep you. Now, this is fantastic. We have a phenomenon in Ga, Krobo, and Dangbe, which I don't know, is not found anywhere, where 1 + 1 is not 2, but is 0. Noko is something. Noko, noko, nothing. Moko is something. Moko, moko, nobody. It's not in his book, and he calls it an encyclopedia. Biko, someday, one day. Biko, biko, never. Dugloko, one day. Dugloko, never. These are the things which should be in his encyclopedia, but not there. I must hurry. What? Yeah, well, I've told you that already. Miscellaneous. There was a good editorial in the Ghanaian Times a few days ago, and it said this. Well, it said, corruption remains a canker in our society, and governments have identified it as a national problem. The editorial was good, but I think he should also say, and international as well, because I give you 2 examples where it's not only national. And the first example is we're doing a ward round on my ward at Kolebu. We admitted a lady with lower abdominal pain. We took a swab and we began with ampicillin. We gave her ampicillin. I said, give her 500 milligrams, 6 hourly. We went back 2 days afterwards and she was worse. So I said to sister, did you watch her take the antibiotics? Because when they are too ill, they throw the antibiotics away. She said, yes, I stood here. Divina Hazel, very good nurse. So I said, let me see the antibiotics. So she brought the antibiotics to me. And I phoned my friend at the government chemical department on the road after Tetekwashi on the left, James Binka. So I phoned James Binka. I said, James, can you come? So he came. I gave him the antibiotics. I said, analyze it and find how much ampicillin in these capsules. After about half an hour, he phoned me. He said, I can't speak on the telephone. I must come and see you. He came and saw me. Ampicillin capsules marked 500 milligrams had only 10 milligrams of the ampicillin, and the rest was Konotey, cassava powder. And this was supplied by the Ministry of Health to Korle-Bu. But the story, it doesn't end there. I began my detective work. And I went to the accounts office of the Ministry of Health. And as I stood in the queue, the accountant said, oh, no, don't stand in the queue, come. I said, no, I'll come. But when he called my name, there was a white man sitting there and asked, whom did you call? He said, oh, I called Dr. Konotey-Ahulu. So he stood up and came to me because I had found 3 names connected with the ampicillin capsules. An Italian who imported empty capsules from Milan, Italy, a Lebanese who put 10 milligrams in the capsules, and a Ghanaian who had a factory on the Ring Road. And they did this. So I knew the name of the white man. And when he heard Konotey-Ahulu, heard the name of the Lebanese. He said, Konotey-Ahulu. He came to me and smiled broadly and pulled me aside. And he said, have you built a house? If you haven't, I'll build you 2 houses. Okay? This is corruption, Korle-Bu. But in this book by James Lefano, whose relatives built Korle-Bu Hospital, in this book, which every doctor really should read, on page 25, right. This is what James says on page 25. In 2008, Merck was fined $670 million for corrupt and illegal practices. Pfizer and Lilly, look at the amount. Novartis, $423 million. AstraZeneca, GSK. So the corruption is not only national, it is international as well. We must be very careful. Now, I'm drawing to a close. Now, I put this here because one of the companies named by Lefano has supplied a drug which I think is harmful to sickle cell disease patients. And an Englishman, a good Englishman who is working in the West Indies called Graham Sargent, he also says that that drug destroys the bone marrow. And I say the drug harms the kidneys. Fortunately, we have a lady here with sickle cell anemia, SS, AIK gene from father and AIK gene from mother, whom we looked after at Korle-Bu. She almost died when she was a nurse. And Alexander Brustego and I sat by her bed in tents for 3 days and saved her life. She went to cold England and did midwifery and went on to America to do oncology and has written a book, Dorothy Emmanuel Aidoo. Is she here? An achiever. Are you here, Dorothy? That's Dorothy. Dorothy Amano Boadu. They say in the textbooks that they die at the age of 30. They die before the age of 30. She's now 65. And she is SS and has written a book. And the drug which is harming people, she as a nurse has said in this book, which she has, the harmful effects of the drug. But it looks as if one of the companies there has worked its way into the Ministry of Health, and I don't know, the Ministry of Health doesn't know that they have been fined millions for corrupt practices. I won't say any more about that. Summary, I must finish now, I beg you. Reject white male superiority derived from Darwinian evolution. Produce evidence of what Africans can do better other than sport. Remember, Agri of Africa, only the best is good enough for Africa. There is but one human race, not several races. I am married to a lady now for 57 years, an English woman. It's not an interracial marriage. Dr. Martin Lloyd Jones, who got first class in medicine in London at St. Bartholomew's Hospital, he married us in 1962. He describes Darwin's theory as a hoax. He said it was the greatest hoax in the last 100 years. He said that in 1959, in the anniversary of how Big Bang, then natural selection, then plenty of time can produce beautiful birds like this. They call me a creationist, but I say a creationist is A-C. I don't put the cart before the horse. I'm not A-C. I am C with the capital C in capital A. I'm C-A. I'm not a creationist. I'm creator acknowledger. That is what I am. I acknowledge the creator. Do not trust genome research, where experts, including Nobel laureates, predict what will be found even before research is done. Accept that there is a supra-scientific realm. Now, I'm going to say that, and I finish. I'm going to tell you something that historically happened and how one scientist interpreted it, but what others didn't interpret. In December 16, 1949, when I left Achimota School, we were given 5 weeks holidays. And I got down to Odumase. I had heard that my younger brother, who was more brilliant at arithmetic than I was, more eloquent than I was, could play football with left and right feet. I could do it with only my left. I heard that they had 8 weeks holidays. So I was annoyed that a younger brother should have longer than I. So when I arrived at Tumasi, I said, we have 5 weeks holidays. How long have you got? He said, I have a week. I said, come on. He said, I have a week. That was on Friday. Wednesday, 21st of December, at Otumasi, we were all assembled, or the children were assembled, helping Mama with baking cakes. I went and got the eggs, Edna went and got the flour, and my brother, who was a gourmet, he used to eat more than any of us, sat in a corner with his chin in his hands. And I was annoyed. I said, Tay, get up from that stool and go and do something. Then he said something. He said, I'm not going to eat this cake, and neither is any of you. And then my mother said, Tay has been moody these last few days. Then came Friday, a week, when he said he had a week. We hired a truck to go to Somanya. The students at Dudumansi were going to Somanya to play a friendly game with the students there. We played. I had scored a goal in the first hour. He hadn't scored a goal, which was unusual. On our way to Somanya, we were singing a song, which all of you know. It starts with, 10 men went to go, a meadow, you can 10 men, 9 men, and come down. And I looked at Jerry. His eyes were red, as if he had not slept. He wouldn't sing. We got there, I scored the goal. Halfway, when we were eating oranges for about 10 minutes, he wouldn't eat the orange. 10 minutes after the second half began, the clear blue sky, there was a flash of lightning hit me on my face. When I looked on the right, there was him lying on his back, his arm on his chest. The referee whistled, pee, 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 pee. He was dead. 23rd of December, 1949. I went about saying, a week ago he said he had a week. A week ago he said he had a week. I published this in the British Medical Journal and challenged Professor Know-All to explain this scientifically. I published 4 things in my experience. This one is the 4th. If any of you know a scientific way of explaining this, I would like to know. But that leads me to my final thing. Dr. Emmanuel Evans-Anfom spells it out in his own words. I'm a centenarian, something I have not achieved by my effort. He knows that his life is supra-scientific. His name, Emmanuel, means God with us. And he believes in the Lord Jesus Christ. And this is enough. We thank God for him and all that. But there are 2 vital comments that I end with. The first is his humility. When the father of Henry Badu was at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Michael Badu himself, he got a first class in Cambridge. He qualified in St. Bartholomew's Hospital. He called me and said, Albert Hall is retired and leaving the Ridge. Could I go and be superintendent? So I said, thank you. So I went and I was superintendent of the Ridge Hospital when Dr. Evans-Anfom came to see me. He had left Kumasi as the vice chancellor. He'd come to Accra. And this teacher of my teachers said to me, may I have your permission to operate once or twice a week at the Ridge? I said, what? If I was in his position, would I do that? I'll just go and say, come on, give me 2 sessions. But this humble man told me this, and this is from his God-fearing disposition. His name, Emmanuel, means God is with us. And he knows that because of his faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, God looks at him, Evans-Anfom, as if he had never sinned in his life. The punishment of his sins have been placed on the Lord Jesus and dealt with. So Evans-Anfom is clothed in the righteousness of the Lord Jesus Christ, and we thank God for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would have asked you to give him another round of applause, but you have excelled yourselves. It is now my adult task to round things off. Professor Konotey-Ahulu began by defining history, continued to talk about when history trounces science. What I got from it is that people use history to show up bad science or make up their minds about something and then use science to support it. He talked about people coming here to do public health, some of whom come to help us, and some of who have their other agendas. And that put me in mind of something that has baffled me for some time. I have promised myself, if I ever do find the time, to research this matter. Why were so many Nazi doctors brought to Ghana? In 1966, a Nazi doctor was traced to Ghana, and an extradition request was made. He was, of course, resisting extradition because they wanted to take him back to Germany to try him. The case is ex parte Schumann. Now, Schumann had been one of the doctors who helped to kill off all the people who were not good enough for the Aryan race. The incurable lunatics, they called them. So he was one of those doctors clearing what they called then asylums. Now we call them mental hospitals, clearing them of these people who would never be any use, who would never recover, so that soldiers wounded on the war front would have a better hospital. Then he helped to kill all kinds of people at Auschwitz. Then he helped to do all kinds of terrible medical experiments. When the war ended and they were looking for these criminals, he found a place in Ghana and was practicing at Children's Hospital in Accra. How many Ghanaian children were experimented on to prove theories that they perhaps had begun to test? The number of doctors who were tried for crimes against humanity when the war ended always tells me that sometimes we take goodwill for granted. We think that every doctor wants to do right by humanity. There are those who only want to build a reputation, and it doesn't matter how they experiment. And so medical experimentation became one big arm of Hitler's experiments to produce the perfect Aryan. And listening to Professor Konotey-Ahulu I began to wonder, do we ever question whether people have come to help or to do research of their own without anybody supervising it? He talked about not trusting genome research because sometimes there are already answers to questions that are about to be asked. And I wonder, what else have we been fed to make us feel not so good about ourselves? To make us feel second-rate and incapable of achieving anything? It's been a humbling event for me, and I hope it has set you thinking too, that indeed not all that glitters is gold. What is left for me is to thank Professor Konotey-Ahulu for honoring Dr. Evans-Anfom in this manner, causing us to re-examine some of the things we have heard, some of the things we have been taught, some of the things we have read, some of the things we defend even. Because historically, the information has been available. He talked about how some people had been depicted naked who were from the Sudan. I once asked the Sudanese ambassador, the immediate past Sudanese ambassador to Ghana, why is it that Sudan has kept its pyramids a closely guarded secret when the Egyptians learned from the Sudanese how to build pyramids? There are many more pyramids in Sudan than in Egypt. And the mathematical accuracy you need in order to build a pyramid, if they had that technology way back when, does it matter that they are not wearing clothes? Our weather is too hot anyway. But sometimes we buy into the rhetoric. We don't inquire enough about motives, about realities, and so on. And we call ourselves names for not knowing how to eat European food. How many Europeans know how to eat akapinchi or any of the Ghanaian foods? So I think it is time for us. Perhaps it's fortuitous that in the year of return, we have a lecture like that. Professor is encouraging you, return to the roots, re-examine all the things that you have been taught. Some of it may still be true. Some of it may have been used to serve agendas. Some of them may have just been used to distort history, to make you find it more acceptable that you are where you are. I am reading a biography of William Wilberforce, and I am amazed at the arguments that people mounted vigorously to prevent him moving the motion in British Parliament to outlaw the slave trade, including the fact that the slaves were so much better off in slavery than they would ever be in Africa, where we are dying every 2 minutes of disease and so on. There shouldn't be so many people on the continent, if that is true. But there are. So we thank you, sir. We thank you. And congratulations for recognizing greatness and honoring it. I thank you.
Shall we please continue clapping for the chairperson? We shall invite the speaker to do some presentations.
For the honor done me in giving me the gold medal of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences in medical sciences, at the same time as they gave Dr. Francis K. Alote his gold medal in mathematical sciences. I present my London University MD thesis as a gift to the Academy before I die. And for the University of Cape Coast, honoring me with an honorary DSc, at the same time as they honored Dr. Daniel Chapman Nyaho, the teacher of my teachers. For me to be honored on the same day by the University of Cape Coast, I present this to Professor Baswa, who is representing the University of Cape Coast.
Mr. Randolph Peby, and music was provided by a group from E30 Akoko Photo Dansuma. Shall we please clap for them? There are two books that patient. He is willing to have any of these books that is bought autographed by him today. And so please, I think the books are outside. If you buy one, just get to him. He'll be willing to autograph them for you, please. We'd also want to announce that Dr. Evans-Anfom's autobiography, To the Thirsty Land, is also available. I'm not too sure if it's available outside. It's available outside. So please, let's avail ourselves to these books. We would want to, we would have reception outside in the atrium. We have come to the end of this evening's event, and thank you very much for being here. Shall we please rise for the party?